Life. It's life. After finishing the last live video, I was feeling energized, so I beat up some invisible blocks with lightsabers, and it was great. A good hour beat saber before bed really is a pretty good workout. I got back to my routine the next morning, but for a reason I do not know, I had a headache basically the whole day. And perhaps as a consequence thereof, I felt super mentally tired as well. And man, I really do not envy people with migraines, especially that have them often. Like, yeesh, how do they function? However, despite my headache, I did manage to get my homework done. So there was that. Then at ratio, because I'd finished my homework, I just wasted my time playing dumb flash games from my childhood. See, my thesis is that nostalgia is a bigger factor in making a game good than the actual good making properties of the game, e.g. stuff like graphics, mechanics, etc. Because I enjoy those dumb flash games disproportionately to their objective quality. Nevertheless, I did still listen to the whole Ratio Crystal presentation, because let's be honest, fancy pants don't take too much brain power, and it was okay, I guess. Noah brought in some decently smart modern speakers, but it just felt like we, as a collective, tossed them in the fire and then poked them with sharp sticks. Like, the conversation was very pointed at times. Get the sharp sticks. And there were a lot more like gotcha questions than actual questions. I've grown to have a real aversion to the sort of like debate-winning rhetorical moves and aggro conversations I used to engage in so often. Kind of ironic, I know, but they really just leave a bad taste in my mouth at this point in time. Anyway, once I was done, I was uncharacteristically tired, and I still had a headache, so I reasoned that I might be coming down with something, and thus I excused myself from the event. Once I got home, I took a bath, watched some anime, this is my usual practice when I feel sick, and I went to bed early. However, surprisingly, I felt great the next day, so apparently I wasn't sick. Since the day I rose was a Tuesday, I, in accordance with my beautiful routine, went to the gym, only to discover to my dismay that rock climbing was closed for remodeling until the end of spring break. So that super sucks, and I guess I'll be running for exercise until then. Nevertheless, I did get a tiny bit of rock climbing done in the pool, since they have a tiny little like rock wall next to the water. And surprisingly, that climbing wore me out way quicker than normal rock climbing. After that, I did quiet time, and then went to my ECE class and got to my second midterm back, only to discover I bombed it. I got in 57. Absolute garbage. And like, don't get me wrong, I didn't walk away thinking I got an A, but I definitely thought it was less I got a B, and there was like no way I got below a C. So to get an actual F was pretty disheartening. ECE has thrown me in the loop like this semester. Like, I don't even feel confused. It just seems to me like I understand everything, but given my test scores, I clearly don't. So I suppose you know you're really confused when you don't know you're confused. The first step to knowing that you don't know is to know that you don't know that you don't know. And I didn't know even that. And see, the feeling you had just hearing that sentence, that's how I felt, getting 57 back on my test. Now you understand. So yeah, upon receiving that second midterm grade, I was barely clinging to a D, and while a D is technically passing, it would tank my GPA, and I don't want to go down in history like that, so I decided I'm going to retake the class this upcoming semester. It turns out that over the course of my education in CSU, I get 3 repeat deletes, which is what it sounds like. So hopefully I'll ace it next semester, and then I'll get to pretend like it never happened. But until then, my GPA has been nuked, so that's killed my hopes and dreams of getting a summer internship, which is mega sad. However, thankfully, I shouldn't lose my scholarships because they only check every year, not semester, so as long as I get back to a 3.0, I should be good. But yeah, that was a pretty big bummer. It also wrecked my plan for a chill semester, since I had to plug that class in when I normally would have quiet time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Also, 3 extra credits. But hey, at least I had margins, so I can make it work, right? So yeah, next semester I might need to kick things up a gear, so that's a bit daunting, but what can you do? So all that happened, and then I went to work and found this cool audio book app called Libby. It's basically like Audible, but free, and it uses the library system to get you audiobooks. Ironically, the CSU library, despite being actually massive, only gave me like 21 books, so that was a letdown. However, I got the library card for my Poodle library card, or library system, and that gave me a lot more options. I've started listening to C.S. Lewis' Space Trilogy while I run because it makes things go by faster, and because William swears that listening to him will cure cancer, increase your Chad rating by 17%, and help you grow illustrious facial hair all at once. So I figured it was worth a shot. But though, so far, I'm not terribly impressed. Like, the books aren't bad, but I still can't grow facial hair, so I'm dubious if it's cracked up to be. Regardless, it has helped me pass the time on some arduous runs, if nothing else, so it's probably worth it for that. Anyway, discovering Libby was great. I then, would say you should get it if you don't have it. I went to math class after that. I went on a run at the CSU gym, and then hung out with Ben and Noah, Rip Joe, and it was decent. We played a bit of an IO game that Ben and I would play called Zombs Royale. It was basically a very dumbed-down Fortnite. And that wasn't bad, but Noah introduced us to some Minecraft servers they played on as well, and I actually had a blast with that. Very fun. Then, of course, I went home, watched some Majesty Reason videos, because I decided to tackle Majesty Reason with renewed effort, and it just so happened that I was able to make the chainmail pattern I was trying to replicate ages ago. Remember how on like 3 separate occasions I tried to replicate this cool like chainmail pattern I was trying to make sometime back? Well, it turns out I couldn't replicate it because I made it up. And so after spending like a cumulative 7 hours trying to consistently weave this pattern, I eventually just gave up and decided to make normal Byzantine chain weave. But as I was watching the video, I just so happened to make the same mistake that I made before and actually started weaving my made up weave again. And it was very frustrating and fantastic. So yeah, I really doubt I'll be forgetting how to do that again. Let's see. In other news, I had quiet time in the Jameses the next morning. I had dog sitting duties, and so I attended to them. And thus my thought was, well, I'm already over here. Might as well, raid the Jameses freezer and have quiet time here. And it went well. It's good to know I can, just do quiet time in places other than my house. However, it was mostly, the music. As long as the music's there, quiet time is pretty good. I then headed over to school, did that whole goodie bag of associated activities. Then I went over to Neo's for our standard Wednesday hangout. I really enjoyed that time. Possibly it's just, I get used to myself. I get to stuff myself with raspberries and croissants. But Clone Wars have been getting actually pretty good now. There's definitely like an increased inequality. Oh, they've definitely increased in quality by the 5th season. And yeah, that was great. I then went over to the James to do dog things, after which went to Magic Club for some, magic at best. And then I went home to sleep. I went to the James to do dog stuff in the morning the next day, and this time I had what I called a quiet time of service, aka I put away some dishes and did stuff at the James' house. I then went on a run before going to class. I did some coding once I got to work, and it was dumb. After I did voice training with Sydney, where we started work on my weak point in my range, aka villager. However, I did manage to get my diaphragm breathing down pretty well, so that's cool. I then assisted Grace with math as she ate food. Thereafter, I returned to Hip Hop Dance Club, despite my previous shaming, and it was good. The song was definitely a sketch one, but such is life. Once I got done with that, I took care of more dog stuff at James's, and I rounded the night listening to some Magic Reason videos and making chainmail. The next day was just the usual. Once I got home, I did some chainmail while listening to the Free Will show. After that, I went to talk with Rosemary of all people, and it was pretty great. Kind of funny, but we've actually started the planning phase. We actually started the planning phase back in October for the hangout, and it actually took like an age, but we finally met up. Basically, she was like, yo, I want about hear about your trip, my broski. And I was like, chill, dog. You down to throw hands at Chipotle? And so we met up, and things went down. She was pretty surprised to hear about all the changes post-trip, and justifiably so. I will say that being pretty used to Alex 2.0 at this point in time, it was almost surprising how caught off guard she was. Like, when I come back, just become Alex 2.0, it seemed only natural people were taken aback. Heck, I was taken aback by myself. But at this point, saying things like, I went to Hip Hop Dance Club, don't sound strange to me anymore. But they very clearly did to Rosemary. So yeah, I don't know, it's cool to see like the new perspective on the whole thing. So yeah, we talked. I caught up on our life some, but it doesn't seem like much has changed since, say, the creation of their like trash tiny home. And by that I don't mean it's trash. I mean it is, but not in the sense you're probably thinking of. The trash tiny home is literally made of trash, or at least mostly. They apparently brought brand new roofing, but otherwise it's from all discarded like sources or actual trash. Like the insulation is just genuine trash. So yeah, I haven't got to see it, but it sounds pretty cool. So that catch-up was good, tiny bit awkward, but pretty great overall. Once that ended, I went home and worked through some Magic Reason stuff and did more chainmail. I then rounded the night with some anime. I then did quiet time the next morning, followed by some Majesty of Reason analysis, followed by some food and anime, and then some more Majesty of Reason before going on a run and receiving my friend Sydney's letter. And that was pretty great, not gonna lie. I think we should all send more letters like those. Letters that just tell people how much you mean to them, that are significant and stuff, Yes, it has to be a letter. It can't be an email or anything. The fact that it's a physical letter makes a very big difference. I should found like a Violet Evergarden letter club, wherein the purpose is to get everyone to send a heartfelt letter. Anyway, it was great to receive that, though it was missing the wax seal, which she really originally put on it, and that was mega sad, especially because it was a Violet Evergarden seal. I have to say, it's epic to have someone that loves Violet Evergarden as much as I do. I don't know about the rest of you, but you need to recognize its magnificence. After I read the letter Sydney sent me, I sent a quick response back before heading off to the Stankies for a dinner thing they were hosting. It just so happened that upon my way there, I was tailed by a cop for a ways, which I didn't know for sure, but I just, like, the headlights behind me looked very sus. And so I played it safe, and I'm glad I did. See, I have a sense for cop headlights at this point in time. But man, cops really do tail you. Like, they were trying to make you speed with just car peer pressure, it feels like. But yeah, made it to the Stankies without a ticket. We ate dinner and played a game of Ticket to Ride. The game was okay. I got schooled by Ben, which was sad, but at least, the game gave us something to do. Once it ended, I got home and got on a call with Liam, and we just talked. Katie has missed quite a few calls as of late, so that's been mega sad. I then responded to Sydney in more depth and tried to find a very good song for a little AMV I plan to make. The next morning, I let out the dog, and the whole encounter, threw off my groove. You threw off my groove, man! I then went grocery shopping, got home, watched some anime before eating some of my newly purchased food, and then went to the James to let the dog out before coming back, and working with Dad on a super short AMV. Basically, he taught me the basics of editing, and I put this together. It's super short, but it took like 3 hours, and it's kind of anticlimactic, but still, I'm happy with it. Well, except I accidentally have one clip where there's a scroll bar in it when I screen recorded it. I can't believe I didn't notice that till after I finished the whole thing. But I kept just thinking I bumped my mouse or something. So yeah, that was good. Dad was a bit overbearing at times, but overall I'll say he taught me well. I finished that just in time for dinner, and then I helped Grace with her math homework. After that, Mom and I watched Dune, which did look pretty cool, granted, but it was pretty darn slow. Still good though. It was then that Noah and Ben spontaneously generated themselves at my house. That was a surprise. Couldn't think of much to do, so we watched a dream video since Noah had never seen one of them before. And then they headed home, and I went to sleep. I did morning dog duties at James's once more. I had quiet time there. Then I went to my classes, did more coding at work, and got a bit of math torture. Once class let out, I did my dog stuff again, did a Funime/anime combo, and then I went and did some more Majesty of Reason analyzing at the James while doing some chainmail work. Once I got home, I helped Grace with math once more, and I rounded out my day by doing some anime before going to sleep. Finally, the next day, I got to have a uninterrupted normal routine in the morning, and it was gorgeous. I then decided to skip my ACE class for math tutoring, which made sense at the time, because I decided to take the L and just try and make up for my other classes. I then had work, after which I went to math class. That was one of the few math classes where I paid super close attention, and everything just started to click for me. It was a really cool feeling. It also made me realize that if I paid close attention all the time, I would probably get straight A's. But it's way too much work, so yeah, no thanks. I then attended a Baja meeting, and we had just graduated. We had this just graduated Mechie talk to us for an hour and a half. Apparently, what he was saying was interesting because the time went by in a flash. After that, I stopped briefly at home for food since the usual Tuesday night package was disfigured, and then I went over to Joe's house and played Magic with him and Benj into the night. Joe was super sleep deprived at this point since he and his family just gotten back from Argentina. The next day, my brain was on hypertension mode all day, which, as aforementioned, was extremely effective, but also very tiring. Once that was all done, I went over to Neo's, and we got into Season 6 of Clone Wars. I also bought giant croissants, which I ate way too many of, and it was great. After I joined John and Magic Club, had a few games, and that was the day. Thursday, I did math tutoring in my ECE time slot, and I felt like I was getting it down pretty well. I then tried to fix this dumb code, but it wouldn't work, and it was vexing. After working on that for 2.5 hours, I drove to Southgate and attended Zach's wedding reception, which was odd because his bride couldn't speak English, but that's all good. Not much happened there. I mostly talked to Noah about philosophy stuff. After that, I went home and chilled for a bit. Then I helped Grace with her math once more, as becoming a dangerously common occurrence. Then Sam, Seth, Benj, Noah, Joe, and I all met up at Joe's house, and the plan was to play on the Minecraft server together, but it didn't work out since Joe's Xbox fizzled. So instead of that, Benj, Sam, Seth, and me all played on the available computers. Oh no, they played on the available computers while Joe, Noah, and I played Magic. However, once that all ended, Joe and I just talked for a bit, and I got to hear about his trip, which was mildly interesting. Friday, I had a later than usual start to school since my professor had a sinus infection. I kept trying to get my code to work for my final project since this was the last day I could turn in, but the grading system kept telling me I was wrong. I think the test is messed up personally. So yeah, I had to turn that in technically incomplete, but hopefully I can talk to my professor and get things sorted. After that, and another big things math class, I went and found my testing locations, which I'm very glad I did because one of them took me 15 minutes to find. I then went home and spent basically the rest of the day hooked on this really good anime about Japanese spies. So I'll confess, watching that anime may have not been the best use of my time, but such is life. Oh, however, while I watched excessive amounts of anime, I did also update my backup thumb drive, so it wasn't all pointless. The following day, I did quiet time, and then did 6 hours of study for my math and statics exams, interspersed with some breaks, so I feel like I made up for my laziness the day prior. I then kind of hung out with Grace before talking to Liam, and beating him in an anime quiz. I think we need to dwell on that for just a moment. Liam, king of the weebs, was finally bested in an anime opening quiz by yours truly. I know, you're all proud of me. It was a glorious day. Finally, to round out that day, I watched some anime with Grace. The next day, I didn't get much sleep, so I missed the church service part of church. But I did come in time to lunch bunch, and, thereafter I played Magic with everyone. And from there, it was straight for D&D at Neo's house, and City's house, where I made it on time, but no one else did. Everyone else was 20 plus minutes late, so I was a little bit salty. Nevertheless, it was a good final session. It lasted until 11 at night, which was really long given it usually only lasts till 5:30. But we survived, barely, and beat the final boss. Overall, I'd say it was a decent campaign. I don't think it was as good as John Sharn campaign, but regardless, I got to play a boisterous hedonist, so, that makes any campaign fun in and of itself. See, in this campaign, I didn't really min-max my character much, which meant that the big thing was a roleplay, since I was kind of meh at combat. So yeah, I really leaned into it this campaign, and I'm glad I did. Definitely made it more fun. So yeah, the session with Quirrell Arcanis is done, and his memory will live in our hearts. Pauses for dramatic effect. Anyway, didn't get much sleep the next day because I didn't fall asleep until 1:30 or something like that. And I had to get up at 5:30 the next day for my final calc exam. Okay, well, I had to say, get up early and they give the calc exam at 7:30 in the morning. So I guess I didn't have to get up at 5:30, but still, who gives calc exams at 7:30 in the morning? Come on. Regardless, I was tired, but I managed to get up and take the exam. It turns out I aced it. 96, baby! Boom! Yeah, not gonna lie, that felt pretty great, especially because, I started off the semester with a 64, which meant that my grade was still a B in the end, but whatever, at least I deserved an A. My brain was dead, as one might expect, and thus I went home and watched anime until I went to work, and then I just worked on this during work because I didn't have any homework to do. Then once my shift ended, I went home and ate some food before taking my statics exam, did well on that, and ended up getting a 94. After that, I was chilling at home and decided to hit Joe up, and he came over. We played some Magic, and I let him taste the greatness that is the Wendy's pretzel burger. Oh my gosh, actually a fantastic burger. And yeah, we talked till near midnight, and that's how that went. Tuesday, I woke up, did some quiet time, and then watched anime until I went to mech exam. However, the review ran late, so I stayed until the last possible moment, which I'm glad I did, before riding very fast to work. Honestly, it probably wasn't necessary since actually nothing happens at work, but still, good principle not to be late for your shifts, or in this case, minimize lateness. At this point, I was feeling so ready for the semester to be over, so it was hard to study, but, I did sort of study. I then did a bunch of random things like clean up my old laptop, clean my reusable notebooks, and yeah, since it was Tuesday, I went over to Joe's house and did Tuesday night things. We played some Magic and then ended up watching White Christmas, which apparently I'd seen part of over Mom and Dad's shoulder, but got bored before I finished it. So that meant that I actually got to see the whole movie. And it was mad, honestly, but whatever. Old movies be like that. Then we watched Hexagons of the Bestagons, which, while I disagree, its conclusion, is questionable. It was nevertheless enjoyable. The day thereafter, I had quiet time. Did more small things like update drivers on my computer and stuff. I went to work, but did not work. And then spent a few hours checking out the newest songs from all the artists I like and adding them to the It's Not That Bad playlist, which just exceeded 1,000 songs. And yeah, I had my Mech 105 final, and I got a 92, so pretty happy with that. Once I got back from doing that, I ate some food, watched some anime, and then went over to John's house, where originally Neo, John, Braden, and Maddie and I were going to play Magic, but it ended up that Neo had to dip since he had to write a final paper. And yeah, that's how the night ended. The next morning, I went to run on the treadmill, but I didn't finish it. I think I bit off more than I could chew, and that was a bit vexing. I then got home and had a quiet time, but I just journaled, didn't really read any Suma. After that, I watched some anime and ate, did work, during which I worked on this life update. And then once I got home, curated my 1,000 plus It's Not That Bad playlist into the It's Actually Not That Bad playlist and the It's That Bad playlist. So yeah, lost about 200 songs from the OG playlist, but I assure you, they won't be missed. See, you may be wondering why I had 200 songs I consider below tolerable on a playlist for 2+ years, and the answer is as follows. I figured out that there are quite a few songs that when you first listen to them, you're like, yeah, no thanks. But if you keep listening to them, that yeah, no thanks can turn into, you know what, that's all right. And very occasionally, an oh yeah. So, having observed this phenomenon, I decided to just put everything that could be remotely listened to by the artists I like on the Not That Bad playlist and wait until a later date after the songs have had time to grow on me to weed out the ones that were actually that bad. Thus, that's all a long-winded way of saying that upon getting home and having nothing to do, I decided the weeding time had finally come. Thus, I weeded, and a new and improved It's Not That Bad playlist is the result. After I finished that, I went to voice training with Sydney, which was good. Then we went and got Wendy's burgers, which was great. Those burgers, man. I actually love them. And then Neo and I watched Clone Wars until around 10, and I proceeded to catch up with William Varley, the one and only. Finally, after talking with him, I went on a drive to just work some things out, and then I got home and went to sleep. The next morning, I had quiet time, did Christmas shopping online, read through an SCP article about divine simplicity at work, which was helpful because it gave me a new perspective on the issue, so I ended up writing those thoughts down, kind of just a stream of consciousness in a Google Doc. That process finished once I got home, since SCP articles can take a bit. I then ate the Wendy's God tier burger and watched some anime before leaving early to go to Alan's house, which is, quite ironic because he's the one that petitioned to go later. And what happened is we were thinking of getting there by 6, but I was like, we could do 7 instead, which everyone agreed. But in my mind, the time was still 6, so I, got like 10, 15 minutes on our way with a 6 o'clock ETA before I realized, oh shoot, we changed it to 7. So yeah, a kind of an ironic situation. Anyway, as a result, I got to Alan's house early and we did whiteboard fighting. It's a tiny little whiteboard, although, it's pitiful in essence, is nevertheless technically a whiteboard. And then Liam arrived and he pseudo-joined the discussion. After that, we concluded that, we played some games, did an anime quiz, where I won. No, that's false. Where, as usual, Liam won. And then Liam headed home and Alan and I talked about the whole church choosing predicament until 1 in the morning. See, as of late, Alan and I have diverged in our pursuits, with me trying to deal with Thomism and Alan trying to fix the whole Catholic Protestant issue. It's helpful in one way, as when we combine, we cover more ground, but it also results in the necessary of times we have to catch each other up, and hence the conflict till 1. But yeah, once we wrapped that up, I just drove home and slept, because it was pretty late by then. The next morning, my day started off at nearly noon, for obvious reasons. I watched a Majesty Reason video, did food stuff. After that, I went to Southgate to watch Christmas play, which had been, a reinstantiated tradition, now that Naomi Jewel is back in town. Honestly, I didn't like it nearly as much as the last one. Maybe it's just because the last one was the first one, and thus I had lower expectations. But I would give this play something like a 6 out of 10. Still, it was decent. After I attended Neo's graduation party, since he has now officially finished his double majors bachelor's degree. Woot woot! And the whole event was tolerable. Quite a bit of small talk, but that's alright. Once I got home, I finished Majesty of Reason video I would start earlier that day. I watched a bit of anime before starting through most of my new 5,000 magic cards with Joe, which was very relaxing. And that took like 4 hours or so. We decided to get in a single game of Magic before calling it a night. The next day consisted of church, a little bit of brawl at Joe's house because now there isn't D&D campaign on Sundays. Joe and I were thinking we could do some activities that include Karina in that slot. However, I wasn't able to stick around long since I agreed to go to the John/Neo grad party at John's house. So after a few rounds of brawl, I ducked out to make it to that in time. Once I got there, Neo got flower knighted by all the previous CSU graduates, an odd but endearing tradition. And then we did a bunch of basically Kahoot quizzes about the content pertaining to the respective fields of the two graduates. However, the big distinction that differentiated these kind of Kahoots is you could steal each other's points. It wasn't really a true test of knowledge. After we did that, then we did a lot of Smash Bros, like 6 hours or something. I totally got a headache, but it was great. However, once I got home, I took a bath because, I had a headache. And after that, I just went to sleep. The following morning was peaceful. I then ran to the haunted game cafe for a gift card before going straight to Sydney's birthday party, which was just a lot of small talk. However, we did get to eat Panera, so that was at least nice. Once we got back to Sydney's house, we took multiple iterations of the Sydney's quiz, which is a quiz Sydney made by herself while we were all playing Smash Bros. For ages. It was definitely more of a trivia-based quiz than an actual significant information-based quiz, but it was still mildly interesting. Turns out, I don't know Sydney very well. However, I did get dead last, so that's a perk. After that, all that happened was some Jackbox games and a plenty of sweet items placed within my grasp just to tempt me. But I, with my iron will, resisted. And so that went down, and I went to meet Alan at Five Guys. While we were there, we just caught up for a bit and ate some fries before going to CSU's campus and entering the Natural Resources building to lay claim to their whiteboards. And upon doing an epic battle of intellects, which was scrawled upon them until no more whiteboard space remained, till Alan had to head home and take care of his children. But nevertheless, we got to have a good whiteboard fight, of which here are the pictures. And should you be able to decipher them, I will bestow upon you the crisp high five. I know. I am far too generous. Pictures. So that lasted until around 10, I think it was. After that, Joe and I met up once again to finish the magic card sorting, and we fought our pauper decks. The next morning, I ran, had quiet time, after which I read an SCP article on retributive justice, since Alan and I's conversation had a theme of that, and I realized I don't really understand retributive justice, but after reading the SCP article, absolutely nothing changed, and I still don't understand retributive justice. So yeah, that's a bit of a big sad at this point. After that, my brain was fried, so I decided to hang out with Joe and do some deck building. I ended up revising my existing decks and not actually building any decks at all, but, that's understandable given the number of decks I have. However, after I finished doing that, I joined Joe and Benj in some games using those decks, and it was good. Upon rising from my slumber, I read some more sumo, wrote in my prayer journal, and it was my quiet time custom. I then watched a Magic Series video before going to Home Depot to buy wood, because I had this cool idea for turning a suitcase into my magic card holder. However, when I went to buy the wood, I was like an idiot and did not realize that wood is priced by the foot. So when the board had a price of $4, that meant the board itself was not $4. Rather, it was $4 per foot. A very significant distinction. Thus, when I was picking out said wood and saw I could get hickory for just $1.50 more, I was like, oh, I'm totally doing that. And yeah, that was a mistake. So I got to the checkout and the lady ran at my wood and I was like, oh no. But due to the combination of social pressure of people waiting in line behind me and not wanting to publicly admit my own stupidity, I just paid for it anyway. And yes, I know this only extends, the idiocy, but that's what happened, okay? At least I'm honest. Thus, I walked away from the significant ordeal having paid way more for wood than I was prepared to. But on the bright side, I have some high-quality wood. So yeah, did that, and then I got home and started my suitcase project, only for it to drop at least 20 degrees in an hour. It got real cold real fast, and this is when the real cold spell was rolling in. And it got below zero. So I was forced to abandon my suitcase project prematurely, due to the fact that I couldn't work with the wood since my hands were too cold. So that was a bummer. Thereafter, I played some Beat Saber before going over to Neo's house to finally finish Clone Wars. I will say, while Clone Wars did look epic in the end, the way they ended didn't really give me much closure. I don't know. I didn't really feel like it ended climatically. However, regardless, having now watched the entirety of the Clone Wars, I can officially give it a rating, and I would say it's a 7 out of 10 show. If I were rating it as I rate an anime, I would give it that. After that, I watched episode 3 of Star Wars, which was so much worse by comparison. The transition from cool Anakin to angsty Anakin was not a pleasant one. And yeah, we got through all that, and it was 1 a.m. by that point, so we called it a night there. And since Neo and Sydney have been doing a bunch of things that I haven't hung out with them since, I haven't really hung out with them since then. The day after, I once again had quiet time in the morning. I also watched Majesty of Reason video after I did a mini clean of my room. I then spent a vast majority of the day listening to Paizo Aquinas and building a metal card holding boxes for my suitcase contraption, which I think turned out pretty well. I was only able to make 16 with the metal I had on hand, but thankfully that was enough to hold my 10,000 cards. After doing that for an untold number of hours, I then watched the Map of Perfect Tiny Things with Grace and Mom, and I actually really liked that movie. It was evidently low budget, but a cool concept, and well executed in my opinion. However, after that, I responded to Majesty of Reason once again, and called it a night. The following morning, I had quiet time and picked up Brayden and hung out with him, and to my surprise, he actually called me out on not living up to my Alex 2.0 standards. I don't know. I just didn't expect that. But after he mentioned it, I realized he was right. So I really appreciate thinking he was willing to do that. I mean, optimally, I want to live in a way that my friends don't have to call me out. But it's good to know that should the optimal not be actual, at least one of them would tell me that I need to fix it. Anyway, after that conversation, we just played Magic in the building inside the Modern Library on campus, and it was fun. Got some good games in, and I really do enjoy some 1v1 Magic. I don't know. It's relaxing. You can have conversations while you do it, as long as the other person is experienced. And yeah, I just really enjoy that time. Once I got home from that, I watched a man movie with my family before attempting to build another Magic the Gathering pauper deck, only to realize I did not have any of the cards to make that work. And that kind of sucked. So, because I figured I did have the cards after I looked through all the cards, which took a significant amount of time. So yeah, after realizing I wasn't going to work, I put all my cards back away and watched a bit of anime before we went to sleep. The next day I skipped quiet time and instead went ice skating with Grace down at CSU. Well, it was more like I cleared off snow and Grace skated. I tried, keyword right there, to ice skate with rollerblades, but that did very much not work. I fell like 4 times. So yeah, in case you don't know, rollerblades do not work on ice. Word to the wise. However, the time was still okay. Not great, but not garbage either. Once we got back from that, Grandpa came over and he accepted my offer for a game of chess. I played with my queen and a rook, and I managed to take the victory, but it was close in the end. We then had Christmas dinner, and this friend of Dad's and Grandpa's came over named George Ramaswili. There's like a 0% chance I spelled that right. But regardless, he's Orthodox and was asking a lot of big questions and ironically posing some pretty unorthodox views. So we got to engage in some conversations about that, which, while not necessarily informative, was interesting. In fact, it was probably the most engaged I've been in any family Christmas thus far, so I count that as a win. After dinner, we all went to Southgate Christmas Eve service because I was apparently supposed to dress up for, and yeah, I did not do that. The service was pretty normal, honestly, and we didn't get to keep the candles, so that was sad. Once I got back home, I watched a pretty garbage Studio Ghibli movie, which I only watched because I didn't know it was Studio Ghibli, and after that I engaged in an hour and a half of existential pondering about existence. I don't mean that sarcastically, as if like the madness of the movie made me question the will to live, although that's not wholly implausible. But rather, I've been trying to figure out what the heck changes and if it's even real, so that brought me to thinking about existence for an hour and a half. Then, after my brain had depleted its life force, I then proceeded to finish a garbage anime about vampires that still makes no sense to me. I would give you another, how does this even make sense rant, but I figure most of you don't care, so I'll pass. The next morning was Christmas. Woo! For Christmas, Mom helped me buy a new Oculus, a game called Moss, which was really well done. I mean, it's not really replayable because it's a story, but it was a very, very well made game. And if it weren't for not being replayable, it would probably be my favorite VR game. We kind of dispersed presents throughout the day, which I thought was probably the best way to do that. And then Grandpa came over once again and played a game of chess with Dad. Oh, and I played a game of chess with Dad without my rook, and to my surprise, he beat me. Dad, when he tries, is a lot better at chess than I give him credit for. Anyway, after that, at least an hour and a half game, we watched some anime as a family before I played some of my great VR game and went to sleep. The day after Christmas, I did quiet time in the morning and finished out the prayer journal I had been keeping since the trip, so that was a bit of a monumental event. I then worked through an SCP article on change and wrote down my thoughts till my brain was tired, and thereafter, I finished a very good VR game. After that, I watched some anime with Grace for a bit, and she really liked the show. I hadn't seen it, but rewatching it actually made... Oh, I'd already seen it, but rewatching it made sense, so that was nice. And then, once we finished the anime movie, I went over to Joe's and played Magic with him till late. The next day, I woke up at 6 in order to get to Thomism, Elementary. Oh, to Thompson Elementary in time for the hike that has now been deemed the Millard Mountaineering Club. While the early wake-up time was painful, the more thing that was painful was when I got to the meetup spot, my low oil pressure light came on, which I ignored since I, had I tried to fix it, then I would have been late. So hopefully there's no unpleasant consequences for that. And yeah, at least then I was noticing my car was leaking oil at a very significant rate. I then parked my car at Thompson and was like, I'll fix it later. And then went on a hike. Now, thankfully, Mom bought me a windbreaking jacket for Christmas because the wind on that hike was insane. Definitely the strongest wind I've ever seen. Strong enough that it would nearly knock you over sideways when you walk perpendicular to it. And also strong enough that you could fall back at a 25-degree angle and just be held up. It was crazy. But regardless, we were still the Miller Mountaineering Club, so we hiked through it anyway. And though, to be fair, we did actually, what we did would probably be better described as swimming through snow than hiking. Thankfully, there was a significant portion of the hike that was along a road, so we were not significantly post-holing for that. But as soon as we left the road, the waist-deep snow, at least for me and Caleb and Chris, was just post-holing every other step. And it was a slog. The worst part is I hadn't worn any waterproof pants or shoes, so quickly my jeans were very soaked and frozen all the way up to my waist. Yet, kind of ironically, the fact that I was significantly uncomfortable and could not feel my legs totally pumped me up. I think the reason for that is for quite some time now I've been pursuing comfort in a lot of ways, but I got to be uncomfortable. I mean, I kind of had to because you couldn't just walk back by myself. But regardless, I chose to enjoy my discomfort, and it was great. I don't know, it just made me feel alive. But whatever the reason, being uncomfortable was honestly probably the best part. However, I will say that the other almost best part was probably catching up with Molly and Cable. Their lives are really interesting, and just hearing that, the grown and the stuff they've been working through is just really cool. So yeah, I really appreciate both those conversations quite a bit. We ended up not going all the way to the lake. We were planning to, since an hour or so post-holing in, we were pretty clear that everyone was we're done. So Mrs. Miller called it there and had us turn around. Still, we made it pretty far, and I deemed the hike a success. Once we got down from the hike, I drove to Esses, and as is hiking club tradition, ate at Nepalese. I've got to say, having not seen them all in ages, the hiking group is just really unique and a cool group to be a part of. We're all just sitting around the table, and 10 of us, and not a single one of us has any social media accounts, at least that we use for social media purposes. How cool is that? So yeah, we all just had some more trivial conversations over good Indian food, and that's how that went. We then drove down listening to worship music. I dumped like 5 quarts of oil in my car, and then hoped the leak wasn't so fast as to burn through that all before I made it home, back to Molly's house. And then, once we got there, we all kind of chilled. I played some table tennis with this new guy named Zach, and he was pretty good, but couldn't have the true test of skill since there was only one spin battle. I also got a Miller Mountaineering shirt, and man, I actually love that thing. Let me see if I got a picture. Boop. And yeah, look, my quote is incarnated there. It's pretty great. Plus, it's a really high quality shirt. That was only like $10. For real, buying shirts in bulk is great. Anyway, I then ducked out around 7 or so because I was tired and everything else was kind of winding down. Once I got home, I took a bath and watched some anime and then went to bed. And, since then I've had to get up at an ungodly hour to make it. Since I had to get up at an ungodly hour to make it to hike in the first place. The next day, the entire daylight hours were spent trying to fix my car. Thankfully, it was just a gasket seal that blew, and there was a replacement seal at a nearby shop, but I stupidly drove to the wrong location, and so the actual obtaining of that seal was far more arduous than it could have been. So yeah, I got the part that I needed, gave my car an oil change, since I needed to, empty out the oil to replace the gasket anyway, and then I just finished replacing the gasket once it got dark. The real sucky part about the whole endeavor, however, is that it was my first time working on this with snow on the ground, and my pants got absolutely soaked, so that was quite unpleasant to work in. Once it got dark, I called it quits for the day and headed in to watch anime with Grace. Then, with the remainder of the day, I decided it would be good to make an AMV for this part of this new Holland song I've been really liking. So I did it. It took me a few hours, and it's still only like 40 seconds long, but I think I did okay. Here's the link. The next day I went out and tried to finish my car, and I found this. So yeah, apparently it turns out putting jack stands on pure gravel is a really bad idea. That night, they apparently both fell over, but just so happened they fell over on the side of my car that still had the wheel, so thankfully nothing was damaged. However, had they fallen the other way, my whole side axle would have been busted, and that would have been a major pain. So I'm super grateful that happened the way it did. But yeah, life lesson. Jack your car up on something solid, aka not gravel. Anyway, after remedying that situation, I then worked on the car till about 3 p.m. before I finally finished everything. There's still this inexplicable exhaust/burning smell coming from the engine that's intensified since the repair, but I can't for the life of me pinpoint the cause, so I'm just going to pretend it's fine. However, I did put a carbon monoxide detector in my car to avoid accidental death, just in case it is an exhaust leak. So yeah, we'll worry about that later. Or never, whichever comes first. After I fixed my car, I did an anime binge because I found that a new anime that was decently high quality. After that binge, I worked on making a second magic popper deck, and then decided to read philosophy before going to bed. The next day, since my car was fixed, I didn't have to stress about that. I did quiet time again. Yay! Then, after quiet time, I did philosophy till my brain broke, and therefore needed rest. And I will tell you, event manifolds, space-time, and gauge freedom can be very confusing. Thus, with my brain properly exhausted, I then went over to the Jameses and got properly crushed by Joe's popper deck. From there, I went rock climbing with Benj and Caleb, and was reassured to know that due to my rock climbing previously, I'd actually improved to the degree that Caleb was only slightly surpassing me in ability, which is cool to learn. Then, as soon as rock climbing ended, I went straight from there to Katie's house, where I met with Liam and Katie, obviously, and her mom taught us how to make fancy meat sauce, which actually tasted so good. So I'm super glad to have learned that skill. We then played some games of the Civilization thing, which the name became, I can't remember, and then called it a night. And I did a bit of anime before going to sleep. The following day was just all house chores and stuff. We planned to leave for Wyoming to hang out with the Macys at midnight, since, New Year's and parties and all that stuff. Thus, the morning was spent cleaning, so we'd have a nice house to come back to. After 3 or more hours of that, I then went over to the part of the house where Charlotte used to live. She's moved out. I don't know if I mentioned that. And I then painted and listened to Pines of Aquinas for 3 hours. I've learned a lot about Marian dogmas from the whole experience. Then, as soon as that finished, my family, save Ben, drove over to the Myers house for their New Year's party, which was very great. We got to play some Magic. Ben and I fought some table tennis, which was good. And we had good food, and it was just, overall fun. Though, of course, that ended at midnight, and upon the chiming of the clock, we swiftly mounted our mechanical beast and began our trek. Grace started off driving, and there were some conversations happening then, but pretty soon everyone just kind of slept, myself included. However, I did get to listen to my instrumental music while I slept, and that was a deeply enjoyable procedure. I did, however, end up driving at 4 in the morning, though, so that was not massively pleasant. But it was necessary, so a worthy action nonetheless. Then, around 5:30 in the morning, we finally reached the Macy's and just crashed. I slept till 11 in the morning, and I actually got some decent sleep in, of all things considered. We interrupt this program for some context. So see, it's been the family tradition to hang out with the Macy's once a year. We used to do camping, but it's gradually growing more and more comfortable. And this time, as time has gone on, which I personally do not mourn. Thus, there's kind of this mode of being with the Macy's. One might say a Macy mode that I just kind of enter into whenever we hang. It's not like I'm radically different or anything. It's just that I kind of put everything to the side and focus on doing otherwise pointless and trivial things. But, since I'm in Macy mode, they don't feel pointless or a waste of time. Rather, they just feel like exactly what I should be doing. Thus, for that reason, being with the Macy's is always pretty relaxing because my only job is, in fact, to be relaxed. So yeah, that was a little side tangent. I had breakfast and played some Unstable Unicorns with Amelia and Eliana, which I realize now is, I used to like it because Unstable Unicorns is basically just a simplified version of Magic. Each unicorn card is unique, and you take turns playing a unicorn card from your hand until one person has 7 unicorns. But now that I've encountered Magic, it's just like unstable unicorns is a pitiful excuse for a wannabe. So yeah, that was less fun, but okay. Then, partially because I realized this, and partially because I could, I proceeded to teach all the girls how to play Magic, and I think Amelia was the only one that really liked it, but Grace and Eliana did seem to understand it, even if such understanding was punctuated with numerous incomparable fits of giggly laughter. I promise you there was nothing funny. They were just both like stare at a wall and then burst out laughing. I actually don't understand the complex infrastructure known as the female mind. Anyway, everyone seemed to get it, but, Amelia got it really fast. We then, for lack of better options, watched Twilight, the first movie. Yes, I know what I just said. But I can say honestly, aside from the anti-romance bias I have, that was an actually garbage movie. Like, trash actors, rubbish plot, very clearly low budget. Just a really bad movie. I do not know what Joe sees in it. After that, nothing really happened, so I watched some more anime while I was, more of the anime I was working through. And to be honest, it was kind of sad because it had so much potential. But it turned out to, just be lame. It turned out to be good when it could have been great. Anyway, after that we had tacos and vodka. Yep, I drank some vodka. Granted, trivial amount, but, it's kind of a rite of passage for the Macy's family. I didn't feel any different. However, the green sauce on the tacos was fantastic. Remember those really good burritos I mentioned way back with the evening industry? Well, I found out what makes them so good. It's green sauce. That stuff is so fantastic. I ate like 4 tacos / burritos, each of them like half a Cuba-sized burrito. So I was very full at the end. That night, as being part of Macy mode, Amelia and I had a very deep conversation, which I thought was very good. We talked for approximately 3 hours before the girls came up, and instantly the quality of the conversation turned to matters much more trivial, so that hurt my soul. But yeah, regardless, a good conversation was had, and I appreciate it. I stuck around for like another 4 or 5 minutes after Grace and Eliana joined, almost entirely listening because I had no comment on how hot such and such an actor was. But eventually I was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to call it a night, and that happened around 1. So yeah, that was the day. The next day, less happened. The girls did a photo shoot and some crafts, and I was kind of like left to find my own entertainment. I tried playing some of my old favorite .io games, but it turns out if you don't use it, you lose it. And when I used to be good, I now suck. So that's not a feeling I really enjoyed, so I stopped. However, eventually, we all went ice skating, as on this particular day, ice skating at a certain rink was free for a section of time. Turns out ice skating is basically just rollerblading. You can spin easier, and there's like a weird wobbling phenomenon I experienced. But otherwise, it's the same. And so by the end of the time, I was just like, I was on blades. However, the fact that the skates were blade-like did not did very little to ease a sense of overwhelming monotony, as I just went in circles again and again and again. So eventually I struck up a conversation with Amelia just past time. Wasn't particularly significant, but it was mildly interesting, so there's that. For dinner, we went out for Mexican food, which was bueno. Once we got back, we played this word guessing game with sounds and actions and so forth, which both parents and the kids. That was a decent time. I then finished the He Could Be Great. It Could Be Great, but it was just good anime. And the parents went to bed, and then us kids all went down to the basement and watched Free Guy, which, while an interesting concept, was so executed in my opinion. After that, I just went to sleep. And that was it. That was our trip to Macy's. The next day, basically the first thing in the morning, we drove back, but it took like 8 hours this time because there was a bunch of snow and dirt on the roads. During the whole trip back, I just listened to music and podcasts, and it was very good. Once I got home, I talked with Alan and Majesty of Reason via the respective platforms of communication, aka Discord and Messenger. And then I started reading Majesty of Reason's book, which he gave me a copy of for free, which I'm very grateful because otherwise the cheapest I could get it was $70. Then, to round out the night, I did a bit of Beat Saber and watched a bit of anime. The following day, I had quiet time in the morning, which was good and all. I then proceeded to go to my shift, and I asked a coworker to cover for me because I had idiotically told her I needed her. I proceeded to go to my shift. I had asked a coworker to cover for me because I had idiotically told her I needed my shift covered that day, not the next day when I actually needed it covered. So that was deeply embarrassing. I then worked on my life demo because my coworker felt bad and went home, which I later apologized for. And yeah, that was all a mortifying mess. Regardless, I did make it through my shift, and I talked with Alan via Discord. I then watched some anime with the fam and made some very poor decisions driving, but surprisingly was not punished for it. After that, I caught up with Noah, watched some more anime with the fam, talked with Alan for a bit, and went on a midnight run. The next day, I woke up and drove nearly straight to the airport with one significant stop to get a Wendy's burger for breakfast. I then picked up Ben from the airport and introduced him to the God Burger, as well as myself getting a second one, and he gave it an 8.5, which I think is a pretty good rating, especially from a burger connoisseur like Ben. Thereafter, he just told me about all the New Zealand things he got to do on our drive home. And since he hasn't finished that by the time we went back from the airport, we decided to go chill at Alley Cat for another hour or so I could just hear all the tales. And that was really great. Not going to lie. Definitely a little bit jealous getting to hear all the things he did. I then had dinner with the family and Justin Sowers, since he was here to hang with Dad, before responding to some things Joe said and making an AMV, for which I shall include the link. The next day was supposed to be a good old quiet time, but I, again, went to work when I wasn't supposed to. See, the first time, you can kind of pass it off as an airhead move, but to do it again right after the first time, that's bad. So yeah, I felt really dumb, and I was sure to go home this time and not let my coworker, whose shift I was taking, leave because they felt bad. So yeah, not gonna lie, it took me a little bit to get over doing that second time. Like, it was very embarrassing. Anyway, I went home, and because I needed to take my mind off the whole endeavor, I went over to Joe's place and played Magic till 6. I then went on a drive and prayed some, and during which I almost hit a car because they had a headlight out and I couldn't see them as I was turning into the lane. So that was almost very not good. Thereafter, I got home, watched some anime with Grace. This anime, by the way, is absolute garbage. Like, had a scene where a dude just ate for 5 minutes. 5 minutes! There was no significance to it. No time to the greater story. It was just a dude eating. Plus, like, 10 minutes of screen time just spent playing shogi with garbage cat animations. I'm telling you, it's bad. And that was it. And then I ended my conscious waking hours. The next morning, I went on a very slow and pitiful run, but I did nevertheless run. I then I filled out some stuff to accept a $2,000 scholarship I received, which I was very grateful for. And then after that, I just went on a walk listening to music before watching some more of my garbage anime. And then sitting in on a family talk where Dad's relationship with the first was discussed. And that was really good, by the way. Glad we had that talk, because there's been a lot of like miscommunication about that situation. After hearing all of it, I feel like there's a good chance the relationship can be healed. But yeah, Ben got some gifts from New Zealand, and I got this creepy stare into your soul Maori face shirt. And yep, it's just good to have Ben back. Once that ended, I decided to make yet another AMV, but this one to a sad song, and I think I did pretty well. And that was my night. The next day, I met Alan at Panera, and we talked for 5 hours before walking around the Environmental Learning Center natural area. After that, I got a Wendy's burger and went on a drive with Joe. Man, Wendy's should pay me to advertise their bacon pub burgers. Like, I'm already doing it. I feel like I should just get compensated for how I'm promoting their business. So yeah, I went on a drive with Joe, had a good talk, and we came back to his house and played some Magic. Once that concluded, I called Michael briefly before watching some of my garbage anime with Grace and then going to bed. The next morning, I went on a much less pitiful run and talked with Dad as I ran. I didn't do quite as well, but I didn't do garbage, so I tried hard, and I would say I exhibited virtue. I then did quiet time before getting started on some philosophical papers, which I worked on for basically 5 hours straight. I then helped my dad paint before watching a video by Lady McGrew, which I personally found unimpressive. After that, I whiteboard fought with Alan for 2 or so hours about the proper way of intellectual inquiry, and that was good. Here are our whiteboards for that. Boop. Finally, Ben and I got talking and decided it'd be fun to watch some good old Phineas and Ferb with the family, and we were very right. That show is actually so great, like legit timeless. As for yesterday, I worked on philosophy papers until 1, ate some food, then worked on the same paper until like 3, helped Dad paint for an hour, then worked on paper for another 2 or so hours, interspersed with other activities, namely dinner, and then Tuesday night stuff. I then finished the paper at 12:30, and I'm pretty happy with it. Now I just have to write like 6 more. And that's it. A lengthy life update, detailing finals week, and most of break. And that's what I did. Talk to you all next time. Also, by the way, this live did able to take the record for the longest thus far, approximately 11,400 words. Just a fun fact.